Late on the mining colony of Kepler-7, the red dust whipped across the barren streets, turning everything a dull, rusty color. The settlement was quiet, the usual hum of machinery muffled by the storm that swept through the rocky canyons around the colony. Most of the workers had retreated indoors, pulling doors shut against the cold wind, but one figure appeared at the edge of the settlement, moving slowly through the haze. It was a mama dragon, her golden scales scratched and chipped from some recent attack or accident. Her wings were bruised and folded tightly against her body, trembling from pain and exhaustion. In her talons she carried a tiny, weak hatchling. The baby dragon struggled, barely opening its small eyes, and made soft whimpering sounds. The mama dragon called out in low, urgent cries. She begged anyone who could hear for help, her voice echoing strangely against the metallic walls of the colony. She didn't understand why no one came to help her. Humans, aliens, and workers alike stayed inside, afraid of getting too close to such a dangerous creature. Many thought it was too risky, others assumed it was some trick or a trap, and a few just ignored her, convinced that she and her hatchling would not survive anyway. The wind carried her cries over the colony, but they fell on ears closed by fear. Inside the human-run facility, the hum of the life support systems and the whir of cleaning machines masked the sounds from outside at first. Jack Miller, a quiet janitor with a mop in hand, moved slowly down the corridor. He had been sweeping floors and wiping tables for hours, the dull repetition almost hypnotic. The colony's corridors were sterile, lined with cold metal panels, with few decorations or warmth. Jack didn't mind. He liked the quiet. It gave him time to think. But then he heard it, a faint, unusual sound drifting through the ventilation. It was soft but urgent, almost desperate. Jack paused and listened. At first he thought it might be some machine malfunction, a warning beep, or even a stray broadcast from the colony sensors. But then the sound grew clearer and he realized it was a living thing calling out, crying, pleading. Curious and cautious, he moved toward the source, following the sound past the main halls and into the open observation decks near the edge of the colony. There, through the reinforced glass, he saw her, the mama dragon, standing at the edge of the red-stained rocky plains, carrying the tiny hatchling in her talons. Her golden scales reflected the dim light of the colony's external lamps, scratched and dull from the harsh environment. Her wings twitched weakly, and her tail dragged across the ground. The hatchling, tiny and fragile, barely moved, clinging to its mother for warmth. Jack's heart went out to them instantly. He didn't know much about dragons. No human on Kepler-7 had ever seen one up close. But he knew one thing. That small, trembling creature needed help and nobody else seemed willing to give it. Jack hesitated for only a moment. He had heard stories of humans being attacked or worse by dragons, but he couldn't just walk away. He pushed open the heavy doors of the facility, stepping into the cold dust outside. The wind immediately hit him like a wall, whipping his coat and stinging his face, but he ignored it. He called softly, his voice barely carrying over the roar of the dust storm. "Hey, it's okay. I'm coming." The mama dragon froze at first, cautious, her large amber eyes scanning him carefully. She lowered her head slightly but didn't attack. The hatchling whimpered again, and Jack could see the little dragon's tiny wings flapping weakly. He knew he had to act fast. He began pulling together whatever he could use. Scraps of cloth, spare containers for food, anything that could help carry and protect the baby. He thought quickly, improvising in his mind how to stabilize the hatchling and keep it safe while navigating the colony's dangerous streets. Other workers peeked through the facility's windows, whispering in disbelief. Some shook their heads, warning him silently that dragons were dangerous, that it was foolish to interfere. But Jack ignored them. He focused only on the small creature in front of him, its breathing shallow, its scales glimmering slightly even in the storm. He knew this was a life he could save if he was careful and brave. The mama dragon watched him with cautious hope. She had never met a human who didn't try to attack her first, and the calm determination in Jack's eyes told her that he meant no harm. Slowly, she lowered herself closer to the ground, allowing him to approach the hatchling. Jack knelt carefully, speaking in gentle tones. "I won't hurt you," he whispered. "I'm just here to help." He wrapped the hatchling in a piece of cloth, holding it close against his chest. The baby let out a soft chirp, trembling but alive, and Jack could feel its small heartbeat against his hand. The mama dragon exhaled a soft hiss, a sound almost like relief. Jack gave her a small nod. "We're going to be okay," he said. "I won't let anything happen to him." Even as the storm continued to rage across Kepler-7, Jack Miller had made a choice that no one else in the colony would. He had decided to risk everything, the cold, the dangers, and even his own safety, for a tiny, fragile life. And in that quiet, tense moment, a bond began to form between a human, a mama dragon, and her hatchling, one that would change all of their lives in ways no one could yet imagine. Jack knew it would not be easy. The colony might try to stop him, and the streets outside were dangerous, full of machinery and dust, but he didn't hesitate. He had made his choice. He would help the hatchling survive no matter what. And for the first time that night, the mama dragon allowed herself to hope that someone, a human janitor, truly cared. Jack kept his hands visible and his voice low, speaking gently to the mama dragon as he moved closer. "I won't hurt you," he said, his words soft but steady. The dragon shifted her large head, her golden eyes wary but curious. She lowered herself slowly, careful not to startle him, and allowed him to approach the hatchling she cradled in her talons. The baby dragon trembled, weak and pale, its tiny wings folding awkwardly against its small body. Jack knelt carefully, studying the little creature and noticing the bruises along its delicate scales and the shallow, uneven rise of its chest with each breath. Jack's mind raced. He had no formal medical training, no knowledge of alien biology, but he understood the basic needs of a living being: food, warmth, and protection. He glanced around the dusty colony equipment scattered nearby, scavenging what he could. He found some clean cloth, an empty container that could serve as a makeshift bowl, and a small heating pad used for the colony's incubators. He worked quickly, wrapping the hatchling gently in the soft cloth to keep it warm, careful not to touch the bruised areas too roughly. The mama dragon watched him closely, occasionally letting out a soft hiss or a low rumble, as if asking questions without words. Jack spoke to her in calm tones, reassuring her. "I'm going to help him," he said. "He will be safe with me. I promise." She tilted her head, sensing his sincerity, and gave a quiet exhale that sounded almost like relief. Using the container, Jack heated some nutrient paste over a small colony heater. It wasn't ideal, but it was enough to give the hatchling some energy. Carefully, he offered a tiny amount to the baby, who sniffed at it hesitantly, then licked it cautiously. Its little tongue moved in a slow, weak rhythm, and Jack smiled, relieved to see the first signs of strength returning. The hatchling chirped softly, leaning closer into the warmth of the cloth, and Jack felt a spark of hope. Around them, the colony was quiet but not completely empty. Other workers peered out from behind reinforced windows or from corners, whispering to one another. "Look at him," one murmured. "He's risking his life for that thing." Another shook their head. "Foolish human. Dragons are dangerous. That baby won't even survive long enough to matter." Jack ignored them. He didn't need their approval or their understanding. To him, it wasn't about rules or fear or reputation. It was about life. One small, fragile life that depended on him in that moment. He had been a janitor his whole life, cleaning floors, repairing equipment, and moving quietly through the colony. But now he realized his actions could matter in a way no one expected. A life, even a small one, could be saved if he acted with courage and care. The mama dragon shifted again, letting Jack work without tension. He improvised a small cradle using the cloth, a few pieces of metal from broken equipment, and some soft padding from the supply lockers. It wasn't perfect, but it would allow him to carry the hatchling safely across the colony without risking further injury. The baby nestled inside, looking up at him with wide, trusting eyes. Jack's heart swelled with a mixture of fear and determination. He spoke again, this time to both of them. "We're going to get you somewhere safe. I'll protect you both. You don't have to be afraid." The mama dragon lowered her head to the hatchling, nudging it gently toward Jack as if acknowledging his promise. It was a silent agreement. He would help them and they would trust him to do it. As Jack prepared to move, he looked around at the whispers and cautious eyes of the other workers. They didn't understand. They saw only a human and dragons, a dangerous combination that should have been avoided. But Jack had never been one to follow the crowd when it came to what was right. He knew that inaction would mean death for the hatchling. Action, even if risky, could mean survival. He adjusted the makeshift cradle and lifted it carefully, supporting the hatchling against his chest. The mama dragon watched intently, her amber eyes never leaving him, as if she were measuring his intent, judging whether he could be trusted. Jack moved slowly, speaking softly to keep both dragons calm. "We're almost there," he murmured. The hatchling chirped in response, a tiny sound that filled Jack with quiet determination. Outside, the red dust continued to swirl, and the colony's usual hum of machinery was faint under the wind. Jack knew that moving through the streets would not be easy. There were patrols, heavy equipment, and dangerous terrain to navigate. But the mama dragon stayed close, following as Jack led the way, trusting him more than anyone else in the colony. He remembered the fear he had felt as a child, of failing those who depended on him, and he pushed it aside. Now, every careful step, every gentle word, every improvisation with the limited supplies around him was a chance to save a life. That was all that mattered. One life saved. One act of courage. Jack could feel the hatchling's small heartbeat through the cloth, and it gave him strength. He knew the colony might never understand what he was doing, might never approve of his actions, but that didn't matter. He was doing what needed to be done. And in that quiet determination, the impossible began to feel possible. That a human janitor, armed only with courage, care, and quick thinking, could save a life that everyone else had abandoned. For the first time that night, the mama dragon relaxed just slightly. She let Jack guide her hatchling through the rough colony terrain, trusting him with a decision no one else had dared to make. Jack smiled softly to himself, feeling a quiet pride. He was just a janitor, but in this moment he was more than that. He was a protector. And he would not fail. The red dust continued to whip across Kepler-7 as Jack Miller carefully made his way toward the medical bay, the hatchling cradled safely against his chest. Every step was slow and deliberate. The ground was uneven, covered in loose rocks and the detritus of mining operations, and the wind threatened to knock him off balance. The mama dragon stayed close behind, her wings folded but ready to react, watching Jack carefully as he navigated the treacherous path. Her amber eyes followed him like a guardian, trusting him in a way that surprised even him. Every few feet, the dust storm would gust violently, forcing Jack to crouch and shield the hatchling. The little creature shivered inside his makeshift cradle, and Jack whispered softly to calm it. "It's okay," he murmured. "I've got you. We're almost there." The hatchling responded with a faint chirp, its tiny head nuzzling into the cloth. Jack felt a spark of relief. Even a small sign of trust meant everything. The colony streets were not safe. Rusted machinery leaned precariously along the paths, and unstable walkways could give way with the wrong step. Jack had to time his movements carefully, balancing between avoiding the hazards of the environment and keeping the hatchling safe. At one point, a walkway collapsed slightly under a mining vehicle, sending dust and rocks cascading toward him. He reacted instantly, shifting the cradle and moving backward to avoid the falling debris. The mama dragon hissed in alarm, spreading her wings just enough to block the worst of the debris, letting out a low rumble of warning. Jack glanced at her briefly, grateful for the silent support, and pressed onward. As they moved, alien predators that usually roamed the outskirts began to notice the movement. Strange, six-legged creatures with jagged teeth and glowing eyes prowled nearby, attracted by the movement and scent of the hatchling. Jack could hear the soft clicks and snarls of the creatures as they circled, but he didn't panic. Using quick thinking, he found loose panels and metal sheets along the path and used them to block narrow passages, guiding the predators away from their route. The mama dragon let out low growls that kept the creatures at bay as Jack moved steadily forward. Despite the danger, Jack noticed something remarkable. The mama dragon followed every instruction silently, trusting him completely. She didn't try to attack, didn't question his movements, only adjusted her position to protect the hatchling. Jack felt a growing bond between them, stronger than anything he had ever experienced. It was a trust that didn't require words, born from action and care. He whispered to her, "We're almost there. Just a little further." She flicked her tail in response, a sign that she understood. Jack's progress was slow but steady. He had to dodge security patrols now too. The colony authorities had started noticing his unusual movements. A human carrying a small dragon hatchling across restricted zones was hard to miss. Jack kept to the shadows, ducking behind machinery and low walls, timing his movements to avoid patrols. He used pieces of scrap metal and old equipment to create makeshift barriers, giving him cover as he moved. Each small victory brought a rush of relief, but he knew the authorities were closing in. At one point, a patrol appeared directly in his path. Jack froze, holding the hatchling close. The soldiers' boots clanged against the metal floor, and their scanning devices glowed faintly as they moved closer. The mama dragon hissed, her wings flicking in warning, and Jack responded by crouching low, keeping both dragons out of sight behind a stack of crates. He waited for the soldiers to pass, holding his breath as they moved just feet away, then exhaled silently once they had gone. The obstacles were relentless. Dust storms would sometimes gust through the corridors, kicking up red clouds that obscured his vision. Loose panels and broken machinery made each step a test of balance and timing. Jack had to adjust constantly, holding the hatchling close while clearing debris with his free hand. Every misstep could injure the baby, and every delay could mean capture by the authorities. He felt the pressure, but he refused to give in. Even as the path grew more dangerous, Jack found small ways to make progress. He used old wiring to secure loose panels, creating temporary bridges over gaps. He whispered calming words to the hatchling during each tremor, each gust of wind. The baby responded in kind, quieting under his gentle voice and the steady rhythm of his steps. The mama dragon mirrored his actions, moving in perfect coordination, her head low and tail sweeping in protective arcs. Time passed slowly, each step feeling like hours. But Jack's determination never wavered. Every obstacle overcame, every patrol avoided, and every predator dodged was a testament to his human ingenuity and courage. Even the mama dragon seemed to sense the significance of his actions, her golden eyes shining with a mix of fear and hope. Finally, after what felt like endless struggles, Jack could see the faint lights of the medical bay ahead. The facility's entrance, though still guarded and partially blocked by debris, was in sight. The hatchling stirred slightly, sensing that safety was near, and chirped softly. Jack smiled, his own heart racing with relief. The hardest part was almost over, but he knew the authorities would not ignore him for long. He adjusted the makeshift cradle, tightened his hold on the hatchling, and glanced back at the mama dragon. She dipped her head slightly, almost in gratitude, and moved forward to follow him. Jack whispered, "Almost there. We can do this." Together, human and dragons prepared for the final stretch, determined to reach the safety of the medical bay despite the dangers of the colony and the eyes that were now watching them. Jack Miller, a simple janitor, had become the unlikely hero of Kepler-7. Every small step, every clever move, and every quiet act of care was leading them closer to survival. The impossible seemed possible as long as he didn't stop moving forward. Jack Miller finally reached the medical bay, his legs aching and his clothes covered in red dust. The hatchling nestled securely in his makeshift cradle, breathing a little easier now that it was closer to warmth and care. The mama dragon stayed just behind him, wings slightly spread, ready to protect her child at a moment's notice. Jack paused at the entrance, noticing the faint hum of the medical equipment inside. He could feel safety within reach, but the moment of relief was cut short. As soon as the officers saw them approach, they stepped forward, their expressions hard and eyes suspicious. "Stop right there," one of them barked. "Return the hatchling immediately. You have no authorization to move it, human." Another added, "You will face punishment for interfering with colony regulations. Hand it over." Their voices echoed in the cold hall, commanding attention. Jack felt the weight of every rule, every protocol, pressing down on him, but he refused to back down. He shifted the cradle slightly, holding the hatchling closer to his chest. "He's hurt," he said, his voice steady though his heart raced. "He needs help. This is more important than rules or orders. You may follow rules, but he's alive and I'm not letting him die." The officer's eyes narrowed. Their training told them to follow procedure, to enforce regulations without question, but the sight before them caused hesitation. The mama dragon moved forward slightly, positioning herself protectively around the hatchling and Jack. Her scales shimmered under the medical lights, golden and glimmering, while her head lowered in a careful, calm display of trust. She didn't roar or attack, she simply stood there, allowing the officers to see the bond between her, her child, and the human who had risked everything to help them. Jack glanced at her, a silent nod passing between them. They were in this together, and neither would abandon the hatchling. One officer stepped closer, raising a scanner to check the hatchling. The device beeped, showing signs of life and injury. "This creature is in poor condition," he admitted reluctantly. "Immediate medical attention is required." He looked at Jack, then back at the dragon, clearly wrestling with the weight of the moment. The mama dragon let out a low rumble, almost like a warning, but it carried more patience than threat. She was showing them that Jack was an ally, not a threat. Jack spoke again, calm but firm. "I'm not asking for permission," he said. "I'm saying that this baby needs care. If you want rules more than life, that's your choice. I'm choosing to save a life." His eyes met the officer's, steady and unwavering, filled with a quiet determination. It was the kind of courage that could not be ignored. The room felt tense. The officers' weapons were lowered slightly as they observed the scene. The mama dragon shifted closer to the hatchling, nudging it gently, showing trust in Jack's hands. The baby chirped softly, lifting its tiny head. Jack adjusted the cradle carefully, whispering reassuring words. "Almost there," he said. "You're safe now." Slowly, one officer sighed, lowering his scanner. "It seems, compassion matters more than we expected," he muttered. Perhaps this human is right. He is showing courage and ingenuity where we hesitated. Another officer exchanged a glance, and the rigid tension began to fade. They had come prepared to enforce rules, but now they saw the situation differently. They saw a bond formed through trust and action, a connection stronger than fear or regulations. Jack continued moving forward into the medical bay, careful with every step. The hatchling was placed gently onto a padded medical table, and a team of medical personnel rushed forward to examine it. Jack stayed close, whispering softly to calm it. The mama dragon leaned down slightly, observing the humans as they worked, but never leaving the side of her child. She seemed to understand that Jack's actions had created this safe moment, and that she could trust these humans at least for now. The officers watched silently, some shaking their heads in disbelief, others silently impressed. Jack had broken the expectations of the colony. He had gone beyond fear, rules, and hesitation to do what no one else would. And through it, he had shown that human ingenuity, empathy, and courage were powerful tools in a galaxy full of fear. The hatchling stirred weakly, lifting its tiny wings. Jack smiled, relief washing over him. "See," he whispered. "You're safe." The mama dragon gave a soft rumble, a sound that seemed almost like gratitude. Jack looked at her and nodded, understanding passing silently between them. The little life had survived because he dared to care when no one else would. By the time the hatchling was stabilized, the officers had stepped back fully, their weapons lowered and expressions changed. They had witnessed something unexpected, the quiet determination of a janitor who refused to abandon a life, a display of bravery that couldn't be measured in ranks or rules. Compassion had won the moment. Jack stepped back slightly, letting the medical personnel take over. The mama dragon remained nearby, her head lowered, her body relaxed but alert. Jack took a deep breath, feeling both exhaustion and pride. He had faced fear, authority, and danger, and he had not faltered. In that moment, the medical bay felt different. It was no longer just a place of rules and procedures. It had become a space where courage, empathy, and trust mattered more than fear or hierarchy. Jack had shown the impossible, that even a single human could act where others hesitated, that one small act of care could change everything. The mama dragon nuzzled her hatchling gently, her golden eyes glimmering with a new respect. Jack watched, smiling softly, realizing that the journey had been worth every risk. Compassion had won. Courage had mattered. And a simple human janitor had proven that life, above all rules, was worth saving. The hatchling stirred gently on the medical table, its small chest rising and falling with steadier breaths. Jack Miller stood nearby, exhausted but smiling, watching the tiny dragon regain strength under the careful attention of the medical personnel. The mama dragon hovered close, her golden scales gleaming faintly under the soft lights of the medical bay, wings folded protectively around her young. She had watched every movement Jack made, every careful adjustment, and she had come to trust him completely. There was no fear in her eyes now, only a quiet respect and understanding that this human had risked everything for her child. News of Jack's bravery began to spread quickly throughout the colony. Workers whispered about the human who had carried a fragile dragon hatchling across dangerous streets, dodged patrols, and calmed both mother and child with nothing more than determination and care. Even the authorities who had initially tried to stop him, found themselves recounting the story with disbelief. They spoke of his courage, his ingenuity, and the quiet empathy that had guided him when no one else dared to act. It became clear that humanity had a different kind of strength, one that relied not only on power or rules but on compassion and quick thinking in the face of danger. Nearby systems began to hear of the story as well. Traders passing through Kepler-7 carried the tale to other colonies and outposts, emphasizing the bravery of a single human janitor who had risked life and reputation to save a small creature that everyone else had ignored. Aliens and humans alike began to view humans differently. Where other species might have hesitated or relied only on force, Jack's actions had proven that empathy and courage could achieve the impossible. A simple act of kindness had ripple effects far beyond the dusty streets of the colony. The mama dragon remained close to Jack, even after the hatchling was strong enough to move and test its tiny wings. She would follow him as he moved through the colony, not out of fear but out of trust and loyalty. She had seen him act when others stood by, and that had made all the difference. Jack had not only saved her baby, he had earned the respect of a creature that most considered untouchable, dangerous, or impossible to understand. In the days that followed, Jack returned to his work quietly. He continued to sweep floors, clean tables, and maintain the colony's facility with the same dedication he always had. But now there was a new quiet pride in his actions. Each simple task, once routine, now felt connected to something greater. He had faced fear, risk, and authority, and had come through not only alive but respected by beings far more powerful than himself. Every sweep of his mop, every push of a broom, reminded him that small acts could carry immense weight. The hatchling grew stronger each day, and the mama dragon began to venture farther from the colony, testing the skies while keeping her young close. Jack would watch from the observation decks or the colony windows, sometimes catching glimpses of them soaring across the red-hued sky of Kepler-7. The sight filled him with quiet satisfaction, a reminder that the life he had helped save was thriving, free to explore and grow. He would smile, knowing that somewhere out there, the creatures he had saved were remembering him not with fear, but with gratitude and trust. Over the years, Jack's story became a legend within the colony. Children would hear the tale and imagine the golden mama dragon and her tiny hatchling flying across the red sky, protected by a human whose courage had defied expectations. Adults spoke of it too, inspired by the reminder that bravery and empathy could overcome rules, fear, and danger. The story reminded everyone that humans, even those in quiet, unremarkable roles, could act decisively and with heart, achieving what others thought impossible. Jack himself never sought recognition. He worked quietly, content to do his job and know that he had done something extraordinary. But sometimes, when the colony was still and the wind howled outside, he would step onto a balcony or a roof and look up at the sky. There, high above the red plains of Kepler-7, he would see a golden flash, wings outstretched, moving gracefully through the thin atmosphere. He would know it was the mama dragon and her hatchling, flying freely and safely, alive because a human had chosen to act when no one else would. The bond he had formed with them endured, silent but unbreakable. Though they roamed the skies and he remained on the ground, there was a shared understanding, a connection forged through trust, care, and courage. The mama dragon's respect for him and the hatchling's memory of his protection were reminders that acts of bravery, no matter how quiet or unassuming, could leave lasting impacts. Jack continued his routine, mopping floors and checking supplies, but the memory of that night stayed with him. He had learned something profound, that one human could make a difference, even in a galaxy full of indifference and fear. Compassion, courage, and ingenuity were tools that could change lives, and his actions had done exactly that. As the years passed, whenever the sky above the colony shimmered with a faint glint of sunlight on dust, Jack would glance upward and imagine golden wings slicing through the thin atmosphere. He knew that somewhere above, the dragon and her hatchling remembered him, soaring freely because he had dared to care. In that quiet acknowledgement, Jack found a sense of fulfillment far greater than any reward or recognition could offer. And so life continued on Kepler-7. The colony functioned, the machines hummed, and Jack worked his quiet, important job. But the skies above held a reminder that humanity's courage and empathy could reach beyond walls and dust storms, touching lives that no one else dared to save. Even a janitor could become a hero, and even the smallest acts of care could echo across the stars, shaping destinies in ways no one could predict.